the more the economy is destroyed, the more money printing the central banks will do, therefore the richer the insiders get. To think of potential probabilities so you can make sure that you're not one of those victims we talked about. You can either be prepared or be a victim. It's your choice. Where GDP has collapsed, but the stock market has skyrocketed.
Right.
It's gone the complete opposite direction. So the Cantillon effect is when governments or central banks print money, it doesn't go to everyone in the population equally. It goes to the insiders, the political insiders.
Amen.
So who would be the political insiders today?
Clintons. The Clintons, it would be the individuals at the World Economic Forum. So if you watch any of their videos, they've got this whole big push for a great reset, where they're calling COVID a quote-unquote opportunity. Those are their words, not mine.
That's what Jane Fonda said last night.
What's that?
Jane Fonda said this is an opportunity. COVID is the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah, that's their.
Because now the left can get in and blow out the capitalists.
Yeah, that's basically their push. But these are the insiders that are buddy-buddy with the people, the central bankers, who are printing the money. They're closest to it. So they get it, and it hasn't got out into the economy to create inflation in either consumer prices or assets. So their purchasing power, they get the maximum benefit from this money printing, where by the time it gets down to the average Joe, if it ever does, prices have gone up so much that their purchasing power is less than it was before they printed the money in the first place.
Get all this money, CEOs get it, they buy back the shares of their stock, which is
That's right.
a horrifying thing. But meanwhile, the asset prices go up, but mom and pop or the homeless on the street, their consumer price index goes up.
Yeah, that can happen. Or if they do buy assets, they're buying at the top, and the people selling are the insiders that had the money in the first place. They're selling all the way up, right? So in my opinion, and I'm not saying that the quote-unquote insiders that we talked about, that group of people, are actually doing this, but if you think about their incentive structure, they would be incentivized for the economy to do poorly and for the economy to actually collapse. They would be incentivized to promote things such as negative interest rates, because what that does is that destroys the banking system or the economy. The more the economy is destroyed, the more money printing the central banks will do, therefore the richer the insiders get.
Which explains why the stock market keeps going up, 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 even though people have lost jobs, businesses have shut down, the economy is in the toilet, but the stock market still does great.
Yeah, Kim, I had a great chart the other day in one of my videos where I showed the Buffett indicator. And if you guys don't know, that's the market cap of the stock market compared to GDP, right? And the only time that GDP has ticked down was back in 2008, the GFC in this chart I had. And it went down just slightly, but of course the stock market went down by 50%. Now, it's the only time that I've ever seen in history where GDP has collapsed, but the stock market has skyrocketed.
Right.
It's gone the complete opposite direction. So there is no relationship whatsoever between the stock market and the real economy right now.
Why did Buffett sell his bank shares? Why is he buying gold? Why is he selling bank shares?
Well, if we really want to go down that rabbit hole, if we look at what we were talking about with the Cantillon effect, and if he knows the global elites are trying to destroy the banking system by pushing negative interest rates, obviously Buffett wants nothing to do with that.
What do you see the future of banking being?
I think there's a lot. It's all a game of probabilities. There's no certainties. But I think one probability could be if they start to ban cash, which I think they will, then if you look at the Banking for All Act, that's basically where we have accounts with the Federal Reserve. If we, the people, all have accounts with the Fed, then there's really no need for the banking system. There is no banking system. There is only one central bank. That's it. And so if we kind of take it to its logical conclusion, if the Fed has a balance sheet where basically they can take an infinite haircut, what that means is if If the Fed loans you money and you don't pay it back, it doesn't matter. They don't have a profit and loss. So they can start to distribute money. I mean, you want to talk about the Cantillon effect. They can start to distribute it not to whomever they want, but how they want. So instead of giving you a mortgage based on your credit score or your ability to repay the loan, they can do it based on your social score. So if you're not part of...
Did you wear your mask today? Do you have a vaccine shot?
Exactly.
Did you cross the street?
That's right.
Did you bow?
Let's think about this. We all have a bank account, we'll just say B of A, Wells Fargo, whatever, and you get your bank statements every single month, and then you reconcile that with QuickBooks or whatever. So now if we had a bank account with the Fed, then the Federal Reserve or the government would see every single one of your transactions, especially if there was no cash whatsoever, right? So then every transaction had to go through the Fed or the government. So the amount of power that this would give them is basically unlimited.
That's really totalitarian communism and all that.
I think it's even worse. You got to start thinking about these things and think how these people and the system itself, what the incentives are to think of potential probabilities so you can make sure that you're not one of those victims we talked about. You can either be prepared or be a victim. It's your choice.
What could somebody do today to prepare versus become a victim?
Well, a lot of things. If we're talking about from a financial standpoint, I think you have to look at commodities because they're extremely cheap right now, historically speaking. If you
Talking
look
about
at
gold and silver right now.
and oil and uranium and copper, things like that, agriculture. If you look at commodities as a whole relative to stocks or financial assets, we're at an all-time low going all the way back to 1900. The best performing sector in the stock market since the mid-1990s has been tobacco. Most people would never ever know that. So what I'm trying to think through on my own now is if you look at the attitude that everyone's had towards tobacco, since the mid-1990s, it's the exact same thing with coal now. So maybe coal is the new tobacco. And we look at it just from a standpoint of energy, but people forget that coal is a large component of steel. So if you're bullish on the emerging markets developing like China and India did, then you've got to be bullish coal. Well, as human beings, we're extremely irrational, and that's what makes us so poor investors. So we've got to try to eliminate that emotion from the equation and just look at the statistics and invest within a framework. But as far as what else people can do outside of investing and looking at things that are cheap and like commodities, that by the way will do extremely well in an inflationary environment if the Fed and the government keep creating money just out of thin air. But I think they can look around where they live and say, is my state going in the direction I want it to go? And if not, maybe I should look at a different state where they've got some ideas that are more aligned with what I think is right.
Crystal balls say about the old-time social programs like Social Security and Medicare, and then all the pensions. Because my pessimistic ball says they ain't going to be there.
Yeah, I think they'll probably be there, but you won't be able to buy anything with your Social Security check. So yes, in nominal terms, you'll get your $2,000 or $3,000 a month, but it'll buy you a loaf of bread because they're going to print and create so much money to make them whole, and it trickles down. It goes into inflation. It drives up consumer prices, especially if you have this move towards socialism, Marxism, or even anti-capitalism. You have to think through what that does. That reduces the amount of supply the amount of goods and services in the economy. That reduces supply. So if you have a reduced amount of supply and a greater amount of money chasing those goods and services, you have inflation going straight up. So, I think that you've got to own some gold. I know you talk about this all the time, but I think that's where gold and Bitcoin fit into the equation.
How about you? I mean, I saw you finally endorse Bitcoin. Not really.
Well, I don't know if I endorse it.
Jumped all over that one.
Yeah, I just look at them as two completely separate asset classes with two different purposes, right? I think that gold is there as an insurance policy just to protect your purchasing power. So I always say you buy gold not to get rich, but to stay rich. And then Bitcoin is more of a speculation, where you've got some asymmetry there, probably a lot more upside than you have downside. So that's and it's a unique. Those are unique assets in that they don't have any counterparty risk. And see, that's very important when you're in the everything bubble. I think the main thing, though, is we've got to figure out a way to limit the ability for the central planners to create more currency. That's what it's about. And if you look at the gold guys, the Bitcoin guys, we're all on the same team here.
Right.
And that's limiting the central planners from creating all of those currency units. Bitcoin, there's only 21 million of them. So if we went onto, let's say, a Bitcoin standard, I'm not saying this is what we're doing.
Right.
I'm just let's go through a thought experiment. Well, that would prevent the Jerome Powell from coming in and taking his balance sheet from 4 trillion to 7 trillion. That would prevent, and not only that, but see, a lot of people on the left say, oh, well, yeah, that's terrible because we can't do these social programs. But what they forget is it would also make it harder for the governments to go to war.
Interesting.
Right? Something we should all be in favor of.
Why is that? Why would it be harder?
Because they can't print the money. So the
Oh,
only
they
way
can't
that they
afford
could,
the war.
yeah, the only way they could go to war is if they actually tax
for it.
the citizens first. And so if we're not on board
Oh, that's good.
with them going to war, we're like, no, I'm not paying for that.